we love those kind of conversations with Pam Killeen. Her latest book is Addiction, the Hidden Epidemic. And she wrote a book several years ago about the great bird flu hoax, co-authored a New York Times bestseller, been a nutritionist and is into the adrenal stuff now and a lot of neurotransmitter stuff that we'll be talking about. Well, can you answer the question then? When I was a vegetarian and then I was crazy and I'm eating meat and butter and eggs and I'm still crazy, can you help? No,
yeah. Well, I've done a lot of research into it now. In the 1990s, when I actually took the extreme route and became a raw food vegan for 9 years.
Oh, yeah.
And now I, of course, won't caution people about the devastating side effects of that. Now, it's not just me, Patrick. It's, I've been at this for 20 years now, and I've lost count of how many vegans have come to me and told me their nightmare stories about how sick they got on that diet.
It's difficult for most. Some people seem to manage it, but most eventually get off of it.
Well, yeah, everybody I started on the diet with back in the 90s has basically stopped doing it.
Really?
And really, I think a lot of what's not being told about it has a lot to do with the fact that, animal fats are crucial for your sex hormones to work properly. And so one of the side effects that is very common with vegans, especially vegan men, is that they lose their sex drive. Their sperm count goes down. A vegan woman, unfortunately, can stop ovulating and very commonly does stop ovulating. And so even if she does conceive a child, Patrick, that child will undoubtedly be born with an underdeveloped brain. And another side effect, of course, and this, people can look this up in the literature, it's there, is that these unfortunately, these babies are compromised potentially for life. They're not only do they have underdeveloped brains, very commonly they are low birth weight babies, and these babies are very, very compromised potentially for life. So, I could go on and on and on, but
mostly the fats, Pam, and the DHA and the threes, the omega-3s, and the good fats.
Well, but the saturated fats, things like arachidonic acid, stearic acid, these fats that you find in things like butter and meat, are very, very crucial for the nervous system to work properly. So, it's really unfortunate, but this information is not coming out in the vegan community. Of course, these people you're going to find more chronic fatigue, more depression among these groups of people. And any health practitioner I know, Patrick, and I've interviewed lots of prominent health practitioners in the field, they will not treat vegetarians because they just don't get them well. They really don't get them well. They're very difficult to get well. So it ruins their statistics. So, I know it's very controversial, and I know it's ultimately very confusing. I was very, very confused about it throughout all of the 90s. But, there's a new book out called The Vegetarian Myth. And
yeah, we talked with, what was her name? We talked with her not too long ago. She was interesting. Yeah, she's an interesting lady. Yeah.
And so
I guess it's controversial because you do find, on the web and other places, and I've certainly met them, beautiful ladies and handsome guys who look great, feel great. And they are vegans, and so it's difficult.
But you have to look at generational. In order to determine whether a diet is healthy, you have to look at very, very clear variables, and these variables need to include: are they fertile? Are the babies healthy? And do the aging age gracefully? Is there chronic disease? Is there mental? Do they have very clear mental health? Very optimal mental health as well. You need to consider all of those variables. And, of course, when I was a vegan, I didn't think about that. Interestingly enough, and I don't know if Lear Keith talks about this, but, genetically speaking, we're almost virtually identical to our ancestors during the hunter-gatherer phase of our evolution. Mm-hmm. And so for us to think that we can change our genes in one generation, it's really, now in hindsight, I look at it and I think, oh my God, how could I have considered that? My parents ate meat, my grandparents ate meat, it's like, how could I think in one generation I could get away with it,
Oh, yeah, it's interesting.
So yeah. It takes anywhere from 10 up to 40,000 years for our genes to change.
In that regard, when you look at ancestral diet and grandmother, great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, you think there's much to the blood type thing?
I'm not a huge fan of that. I think that if something is going to be better than what you did yesterday, diet-wise, I think that's great. But I just don't hold a lot of credence in it. I think that, from
what is it about it that doesn't work for you? From a nutritional standpoint. I mean, it seems that O's, just in my anecdotal experience, it seems that O's do really, really well with meat, or have to have meat more. Let me put it like that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, if something is going to help somebody move in a better direction, great. But ultimately, like I said, we are all hunter-gatherers. That's where we all evolved from. And so we all thrive very nicely on meat. And ideally, of course, that meat should be grass-fed, pastured, whatever word you like to use.
Sure.
Because what happens ultimately is, and I see this all the time when I do hair analysis on people, is if you're avoiding red meat, you're far more likely to develop a zinc deficiency. Because one of the best sources of zinc, of course, is going to be meat. Second to that, it's going to be oysters, which I don't know anybody today who eats oysters.
Yeah, well, who's going to eat oysters these days?
And believe me, a zinc deficiency is not pretty. It's not something you want. And it's not something you can generally fix by supplementing with zinc. So you have to be, very, very careful if you're avoiding meat.
And when you come to sexuality and procreating the race and fertility, as you know, zinc is key.
Absolutely.
It's just like one of the big guys, boy. If you don't have the zinc, man, nothing's happening. If you know what I mean.
Right, but it's also crucial for forming your neurotransmitters. You see, so it plays a huge role. Without zinc, you're not going to have good digestion. Your digestion will break down.
And I think we're too learning, aren't we, that more and more, as many great zincs as you could probably get, liquid zinc and zinc this and zinc that, it's still difficult with taking these things in isolation. I think they can be used as medicine. If in the critical times, and
yes, I totally agree with that.
Acute things if you need to get a hit or something, but ongoing, don't you think that the body really needs to get zinc from the real thing?
I totally agree. I only like to put people on supplements for about 3 months. Depending on how sick they are, it may be 6 months. It depends.
Use it for medicine, huh?
Yeah. And what the supplements I use basically restore the biochemistry back to normal potassium and sodium levels, calcium, magnesium, zinc, copper levels. So I basically target the biochemistry, use the supplements temporarily to bring the biochemistry back into balance. But as they're doing the supplements, they have to do the diet, and that's a traditional diet, of course, 3 square meals a day. And after 3 months or 6 months, whatever it takes, then there's no more supplements. I don't like to keep people on supplements. I want them to use food.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I want to get your opinion on this. We interviewed a couple of people over the years. I think the latest was Dr. Starr, Mark Starr. I believe this is the man, Dallas, very, very famous for his amino acid, saliva testing to get the neurotransmitters and all of that. But where he kind of lost me was at the idea that he says that you really have to take these forever. Yeah. Because then but boy, that doesn't seem right to me.
No, it doesn't seem right. And the reason why I don't agree with that is because protein is made of amino acids, right? And as I mentioned earlier, if you don't have enough zinc in your diet, and there's far more to the story than just this, but let's just make it simple. If you don't have enough zinc in your diet, you're not going to produce enough hydrochloric acid.
Yeah.
Another problem we have, of course, is over our salt phobia, when we should be consuming high quality salt. Your sort of unrefined sea salts, because salt is also crucial for the development of your hydrochloric acid.
Yes.
So if you're not producing enough hydrochloric acid, you're not going to break down that protein into the amino acids that you need in order to target those neurotransmitters in the brain. So if you're eating enough protein, and hopefully you're eating 3 square meals, so you're getting a good dose of protein in the morning, at lunch, and at dinner, high-quality protein, complete protein from animal sources, then you're digesting that protein properly. You'll have enough amino acids to target, for instance, the serotonin, the dopamine, norepinephrine, epinephrine. You're going to have enough fuel for the fire, so to speak.
And so many of us are low on hydrochloric acid. How did that happen? How did that happen?
It is a huge problem.
It's a big deal.
I think it has a lot to do with this false salt phobia. It's like this fat phobia that we have. And yes, they're correct in warning us about sodium chloride, which is your typical, your sort of Morton salts, so your very highly processed salts that you see on the restaurant tables or in processed foods. So yes, we should be avoiding that particular salt because it's not really a salt. It's just basically sodium chloride. And it will cause imbalances in your other minerals in the body, because real sea salt will have about at least 80 minerals in it. So you're getting a more complete seasoning, so to speak. And so, because people have been scared off of salt, they're not eating enough salt, and they're not getting what they need in terms of producing the hydrochloric acid in their stomachs.
Mm-hmm. We recently talked to Dr. Stephen Hines 3 weeks ago. I don't know if you know him, out of Texas, but he does a lot of great work on the gut and small intestines and hydrochloric acid, and he has me taking some hydrochloric acid every protein meal and keep building up until I don't feel any kind of warmth or discomfort, and keep doing that. And he says eventually, because you'll begin to get more nutrients, then the body will then begin to make more and more of its own hydrochloric acid, and you'll find that you'll have to back off. So it's not a forever thing.
No, you don't want to stay on hydrochloric acid.
No, but it's pretty interesting. But if you do it cleverly, I think you can use it. And it's actually helped my sleep using hydrochloric acid. Now, go figure, but it makes sense.
Yeah, because you're probably now absorbing your amino acids more effectively, feeding your serotonin, and therefore producing enough melatonin to have a better quality sleep. So it's a chain of events.